I'm Madelyn Blair. On today's show, we'll be talking with Michela Quilici about why hope is not a good business strategy and how to turn your hope into reality. After our conversation, I'll be talking about stepping away from one hope to a new hope, stepping out of comfort into discomfort, and finding new life. So stay tuned. I'm Madelyn Blair, and this is Unlocked, a show all about activating the resilient leader in you. Years ago, I learned that an airplane doesn't fly in a straight line. It flies in a general direction and constantly course corrects so that the final destination is achievable, even with changing crosswinds. Business is caught in so many crosswinds. No sooner have I laid out a growth strategy for my social media posts, I learn new statistics that mean I have to alter the strategy. The only thing that makes it worth the while is that I know what my goal is, and measurement is always against the goal. If I didn't have a destination or explicit goal, I'm not sure I would know how to handle the crosswinds. Today, I'm delighted to talk with someone who knows a great deal about how to not just set goals, but how to achieve them when the world keeps moving in unexpected directions. My guest is Michela Quilici. For over 2 decades, Michela has been a dedicated business and leadership coach and consultant, working with hundreds of companies and individuals globally from startup to $20+ million, helping business owners and leaders bridge the gap to their next level of personal and professional growth, with a focus on business growth strategy, marketing, sales, and leadership. I'm going to bring her on, but then I'm going to tell you a little bit more about Michela. Hello, Michela. Welcome.
Hi, Madelyn. Thank you for having me today.
Oh, you're so welcome. I have to tell the audience a couple more things. You've been featured in USA Weekly, Canadian Living Magazine, Forbes, and you've even appeared on WSA TV and dozens of podcasts. And you've contributed to 5 international best-selling books, including Conscious Business. And you've received multiple awards. And the one that I love the most is Top 15 Coaches in Amsterdam for 2024. So congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you.
You're welcome. Listen, I'm so happy to have this opportunity to talk with you about navigating growth. I mean, having been in business for more than 35 years, I'm always surprised when I'm hit with another surprise. To my carefully planned strategies, I think they're carefully planned. For example, I develop a new publication. I plan its distribution channel only to learn that the best action is on another platform. At those moments, I have to reassess why I'm in business. And so long as I can answer that question, I can go on to determine my next step. Shift to another platform or change the publication design. Not always easy, but without that reminder of my goal, I would get lost. Now, when you work with your clients, what are the major concerns they come to you for help?
So I'm all about empowering high achievers in business to really clarify their priorities, pursue elevated success, and navigate change with ease. And typically, I work with people who are successful, they're educated, they're growth-minded, they're professionals, and they've reached a point in their career or their business where they now want more or different or better. Maybe their priorities have changed, their values have changed, they've reached many levels of success for themselves, but maybe they're thinking, what is this it? Or they have the big vision or the new vision for what they see for themselves or their business. And really they want a clear path to growth. they sometimes have so many ideas and such a big vision that they don't necessarily know how to operationalize it. And so I help them in a lot of cases get clarity. With that clarity comes the confidence. With that, they can see that there's a strategy and a plan for the vision to take that vision, bring it down, and run it on the rails of an action plan, if you will. But not that it's so constrained because they are visionaries, right? That it feels like a straitjacket. So to really then help with that course correction, like you're mentioning, and realign, realign their business um, to the new goals or to their new vision. So those are some of the examples.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I'm delighted that you gave me those examples because they very much match the kind of folks that are in my audience. So, okay. Well, I know that you're all about creating a clear map for getting from where you are to where you want to be. I absolutely loved your opening video on your show, on your website when you're in your car trying to get somewhere. I thought that was just such a wonderful metaphor.
Getting lost in the forest, right?
Right.
Because some of my clients, actually one of my clients, she gave me the best marketing soundbite. She said, working with you is like calling AAA for your business breakdowns.
I love it.
So it's like, and that's usually the case, right? Is we can get lost. What's that metaphor, right? You can't see the forest for the trees. And so that's why the video I thought would be a great storyboard, to use the metaphor of the car being lost in the forest and can't see the forest for the trees, and then whipping out the map and charting a course to find your way back again. So.
Yeah. So, but what does a map look like for a business? Do you know where you are on it? How do you do that? And how do you even jumpstart yourself when you're really stuck?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So the business growth roadmap, it's not rocket science. I mean, there's in the way that I look at a business, I look at 7 different areas of the business in order for it to be, because business is a system. So it's all working together, as it should anyway. Theoretically, it should all be working together as a system to be functioning optimally. And so I look at 7 different areas. And so that would be looking at the business model itself. So what is the business strategy? What is the profit model? So what type of business is this? How are we making money? That sort of thing. The second piece of it is, what is the vision of the business? What is the mission? What are the values? So what are we trying to achieve, in terms of why do we exist as a business? What's important to us as a business? What kind of impact are we trying to make in the world? The third is, what are the goals and objectives? So what are we trying to achieve? And then, of course, how are we measuring success against those goals and objectives? The fourth is the brand strategy, which sometimes I think is overlooked because we can get away with not having a brand strategy only up until a certain point.
Tell me about it.
But if you want it to be a little bit easier, and if you want your sales cycle to be shorter and conversions to be easier, and to navigate the ups and downs of the external world, the economy, for example, having a really solid brand strategy, in other words, what is the unique selling feature of, why are you different? How are you driving value in a way that makes your offering a must-have, not an optional thing. So taking yourself out of the commodity positioning and moving it into something that is of true value. So that's number 4. Number 5 is having a really solid marketing and sales strategy and tactics that match the model. So as you know, Madelyn, there are hundreds of different ways one could market a business, but not all marketing tactics are relevant for all models. So for example, a B2B versus a B2C would have a different marketing strategy. And then there's the sales piece. So sometimes I find that I come across businesses that have a huge focus on the marketing side of things, but they're not, and they're thinking that the marketing is going to solve the sales problems. But when I dig deeper, it's really perhaps a lack of a solid sales strategy to convert those leads coming in.
Let me just interrupt you for a moment, because I think that's an interesting contrast. Oftentimes people do confuse. I admit I confuse it myself. Is it marketing or is it sales? Give me one example that would distinguish those two things.
Yeah, so the way that I look at it, the easiest way, I suppose, is that marketing is responsible for generating the leads, the lead generation piece. So that's all the things that go into that, the messaging, the strategy, how are you generating the leads? How are you creating visibility for yourself? And then once the leads come in, so you've got the attraction piece, the engagement piece, and the conversion, right? Attraction, engagement, and conversion. So it's then marketing handing the baton over to sales, where then sales takes over in the engagement and conversion and closing process. So marketing and sales really need to be working in tandem with one another, because they in order for the whole system to be working optimally and the most efficiently as possible.
Well, thank you for that distinction. It really makes a difference in my own mind, so I can easily now say, okay, this is part of what I have to do on marketing. And now let me focus on this other sales. Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, welcome. Number 6.
Number 6 is operations. So what is the right structure? What are the right systems? What are, technology could fall under that, tools and technology could fall under that, in terms of what are the right structures and systems in place that need to be there to support the particular goals that you have and the strategy that you have. And then the 7th is people and leadership. So who's on the team, who needs to be on the team, and how are you leading? And how are you supporting your team to up level their leadership skills? So those would be the 7 areas of what I would call a business growth plan. And when I work with clients, I do a bit of an audit in those 7 areas, just to really see where are you at and how do you stack up in those areas. Are there glaring gaps? Where are you bumping up against yourself in the business? So doing an audit, right, is a great way to, or running a diagnostic is a great way to determine where you're at and where some of the gaps might be, or the sticking points, or, where you might be spinning your wheels.
Go ahead.
No, that's what I was going to say.
It occurs to me what you just talked about was an existing business. What if you're just starting out? Can you, and I used the word jumpstart earlier, and that's a great word. Is there a way you help people just get started?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So I have an example of what that looks like in real life. A client came to me. She wanted to, very successful corporate career, wanted to bridge out of corporate to really pursue her purpose and her passion and further along her big mission. And so she came up with an idea. And again, visionary, smart, great idea. But ideas are not enough, right? So she reached out to me, and I asked questions about the idea, because it was clear to me after a while that she didn't actually have a business model. She had an idea for a product, an idea for an offering, a message for her movement, and one marketing tactic that was working really well for her to create visibility. but that's not the makings of a business model. So the first step would be to get clear on what is the model, what are you selling, how are you selling it, but not only the product, but think of it like a business, because otherwise you're just hustling, selling products. So what does that look like? You know, what do you want to create? You know, and that's where the vision becomes really important, to take that vision and then create something a bit more solid from that.
You know, it reminds me of a product that I had an idea for, and I I realized that women's clothing have no pockets. They're just not designed for pockets, right? Yet I need my phone with me all the time. And so I created a product called La Pocket. Right? Had to find a manufacturer and all this stuff. But it really wasn't until I realized I needed to, what was my strategy for getting to the marketplace? And until I had any inkling of what to do, I needed to go through that piece and turn it, as you say, into a business. Now, the tragedy is, once I had that all done, I lost my manufacturer. And I didn't want to go east to get my manufacturer. I wanted to do it in this country. And so I had to stop. But it was interesting how you go from an idea, a hope, as you described it.
Exactly.
And walk it through. Yeah.
Exactly. And so what happened with this particular client is that she had an idea. And if she had run with that idea, when we worked out, you know, okay, well, then what? Okay, so you've got this thing, but then what? What's the end goal? What are you trying to do? That's when the light bulbs went off, right? And then it became less about, oh, I have this idea to sell this thing. And it was more about, no, like, what movement are you want to create in the world? What change do you want to create? What do you actually want to, the impact? And so then you can kind of reverse engineer. Okay, so if that's the kind of impact, if that's the kind of movement, then what kind of business would then support you to do that, to achieve that? So, and then we went on to work together, and I got her to that place, kind of in a fast track sort of a way. Over 3 months, we got very clear on the vision, the mission, the movement, the model, the brand message, so that and the strategy for getting to market, that she then started to get into market quickly, make sales, prove that there was a need for that. And then within 6 months already had a 6-figure pipeline to work with, and went down to part-time work with corporate while she was then bridging both. So that's an example. That's one example. You know, another example that I think about, is Ralph Lauren. I don't know if you're familiar with how Ralph Lauren started out. So when you think of Ralph Lauren, or when I think of Ralph Lauren right now, I think of the full clothing line, right? The polo and the shirts and the slacks and the sweaters and everything. But Ralph Lauren started out with ties. And he started out with one product. So this is another way of going about it. He had one physical product, and he started out just with ties. And he went out to the market purely from here's my product, with a sales strategy to go to get his ties into every single department store possible, to prove that was, viable. And then from that one product that was so successful, purely by the passion and the sales of getting out there and getting it in those stores, then of course the stores are saying, well, what else do you have? And then you expand the product line from there. So there are different ways of going about it. But at the end of the day, I think it's really important to be clear on what the vision is, and then get into action to prove that there is demand, and that there is a market for what you have to offer, or what your idea is. Because I see so many times people making the mistake of spending too much time in the lab incubating the idea, spending so much money, and then getting out to market a year or so later or longer after having spent so much time and money and resources, and they've built out this product or service and they haven't quite hit the mark on it and it doesn't take off as planned. And then you have to do a lot of backpedaling to figure out how to change it and what happened and all of that. So,
but if you have a clear, as you say, if you have a clear sense of what you're trying to accomplish, then you know if you're making it or not.
yes, exactly. And once you get into action, you've heard the saying, fail fast, right? Like once you get into action, you're moving, there's momentum. And so it's easier then, as long as you can detach from holding on so tightly to the way we think it's supposed to look or the way we think it's supposed to be, or and if we can detach from that, then, and we can allow ourselves to not make mistakes, but make maybe missteps or go in directions where we can then take feedback and adjust, because that's really what it's all about. The market will tell us what to do. We just have to have the courage enough to put ourselves out there, be vulnerable, and then take the feedback, because the market will tell us whether they like your product, whether they don't like it, whether there's a need, whether the price is too high, too low, whether the message lands or not.
Now, you've described an example to me that sounded like you were working with an individual. When you work with a company, do you do the same kind of thing with do you work with the management team? Do you work with managers of teams? How do you generally interface with large companies?
So typically it's going to be initially with the CEO or founder of the company. And then if they have a leadership team, then it would be to work with them as well. And if it's a bigger company with emerging leaders, then there could be a component to support the emerging leaders. But typically what I have found, as an example, recently worked with a company who'd been in business for many, many years, but have, reached a plateau, big vision, has the operational team, has the leadership in place, has the structures, has the, all of that. But it was that, how do we operationalize the vision to take this business from here to here, knowing that we've got big goals and we've got a big impact we want to make in the world? What are the right steps? In what order do we do those things? How do we plan out the growth over a 5-year period? What makes sense in terms of how we need to navigate the first, second, and third steps. So it's the same process. It always starts with getting clear on what is the vision, what are the values, what is your mission, what are you trying to achieve? And sometimes it's reassessing that, because those things can change over time. Yeah. So if you have been in business for 5, 10, 15 years, sometimes 20 years, it is good to go back and make sure that what resonated when you initially started, does it still resonate? What needs to change? And then go from there. So you're realigning, essentially. And it may seem basic, but oftentimes it's those simple back to basics that we don't do when we're busy running a business and growing a business. We forget about the basics.
Actually, as you're talking, I keep thinking about my example of the Le Pocket. It's exactly what I did. I was very busy because Le Pockets was a kind of a left hand. My left hand does that well.
Right.
While I do this main business over here. And I'm thinking to myself, what piece did I really miss? I mean, yes, I lost my manufacturing, but the bottom line is I didn't even think about the fact that she might not be able to do the manufacturing. I didn't have any backup at all. I didn't even have any backup for the marketing of it. I was working through one what do you call it, boutique. And now that you talk about the market being giving you the signals, how can you measure it with just one boutique and one person doing the manufacturing?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. But because we wear all the hats, especially when we first start,
Yeah, yeah,
of course, we were wearing all the hats, and where do we get pulled to?
yeah,
Typically we get pulled into the direction of the passion, right?
yeah,
And it's
absolutely.
mostly the product, the service, the thing that you're excited about to get out into the world. And it depends on the experience of the business owner. Um, I find a lot of people hate marketing, and they don't want to do sales, or they are great at sales, but they don't think they need marketing. Or there's always some piece, right,
Yeah,
or pieces that we love to spend our time in working on, and I feel that it really aligns to one's personality as well.
yeah, yes.
So it's knowing yourself, and really being that self-awareness piece is so important. And when I work with people, I like to work in the areas of not only strategy for the business itself, but also that self-awareness piece, because that's key. That's really key, because I do believe that your business will only grow to the level of your own personal development, because you will be you'll bump up against your next growth edge. There's always a growth edge.
Mm,
And so um, your business will show you, if you're looking at it from that perspective, right? Which I know can seem kind of almost like a spiritual perspective. But if you look at it as everything is a mirror to teach us something about ourselves, it's quite an enlightening process to be able to say, okay, what's not working in my business right now? And is that something that could be a reflection of what I'm resisting, or
yeah,
what I'm not
yes,
looking at, or
yes.
what I need to be focusing more on? So that curiosity,
Mm,
I think, is key. Like, all the business owners I know who are super successful, they have found a way to replace their ego with curiosity.
I love that.
They
Replace.
really have. And I know we all have ego, and it's not about getting rid of it, but I think there is a balance there, because if we can be curious,
Hmm.
and if we can have that sense of detachment in a way, and
Hmm.
not wrap our self identity into our business, or our personal value, into the results of our business,
Hmm.
I think that's when we can really make objective decisions, um, for the good of the business, for the good of the team.
I particularly love your word curiosity, because when I work with resilience, and when I'm working with someone, that's one of the characteristics of a highly resilient person. They
Mm-hmm.
are insatiably curious. They're not just curious, they're insatiably curious. So
Mm-hmm.
that they're even the toughest thing that hits them, yes, they may pause, but then they become curious, and and can keep on going. You know, also, I love your statement. I think it was on your website, that hope is not a good business plan.
Mm-hmm.
And I think what you've been talking about is entrepreneurs begin with hope and passion. Uh, why is it not enough?
Yeah, I mean, let's be honest. Hope is a requirement, in my opinion, because without it, I don't think we'd have the courage or inspiration to even get out of bed in the morning. So I think we need hope. Okay, that needs to be there. Um, But hope as a business strategy, I find, is very disempowering, in my opinion. It's like going to the casino and putting all of your
Ah,
chips on black at the roulette table and just hoping for the best. Why would we want to do that with our business? Um, we need hope, don't get me wrong, but hope is not enough, right?
mm,
Because I don't know. When I think of hope, I think of like, okay, cross our fingers, let's see what happens. And that's just not good business, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
So there are other things, obviously, that you need. Hope is one of them. But when it comes to growth, and if you want to grow, and if you have dreams, and if you have goals, then putting ourselves in more of a power position, right, in more of an empowered position, then putting together some kind of strategy and plan to, again, make that hope, turn that hope into a reality. I think it's just makes good business sense.
Yeah.
I'll tell you a story. There's a story I wanted to share about that,
Please,
Madelyn.
please.
So I worked for many years in growth stage startup. So one particular startup, leading the marketing team and youngest executive on the team, very fortunate to have gone through that experience at such a young age and working directly with executive leadership. I learned a lot during that experience. And one of the things that I learned as we were growing this internet company back in 2000 was that the passion of the CEO was a necessity to get things up and running and in motion, because startups are tough. Because you're literally, it's a startup. You are starting from zero, from scratch, trying to make something kind of take off. And so I remember a few years into it, we were hit with 9/11.
Mm.
And a lot of our business was tied up in that part of the world. And we had clients in the Twin Towers. And it was a big blow. Let's just put it that way.
Yeah.
It was a big blow. And essentially, we could have said, okay, well, we've just lost, the majority of our market in an industry that's going to take a long time to recover. Let's just see what happens, or we could have said, okay, well, let's just close up shop. But we didn't do that. I mean, the CEO basically stood up in front of the room and said, nobody panics until I do. Yes, this has happened. We've lost, this has been a huge loss in our business. But we will recover, and this is what we're going to do. And so the strategy was redefined literally within 24 hours. We switched, we moved into a completely different market that was somewhat unaffected by what had happened. And we moved on, and we were very clear, we came back together as a team and we're very clear on, this is our unique value. This is our vision. This is what we're trying to do in terms of our objectives and our goals. The offering is the same. In this case, we didn't have to change the offering. We just had to change the market and move into a different market. So that's an example of just not letting external circumstances or, hope for things to get better. Like things happen in the economy, pandemics, anything can happen, but we can't, or I guess we can, but, if we want to take more ownership and be more in the driver's seat of the results, then leaving that hope aside and really kind of taking back your power in terms of, okay, what are we going to do now? And how are we going to move this ship forward again? Just makes sense to me.
Oh, that's a dynamite example where you literally had to shift your market. I mean, that's big. I can think myself, my goodness, if I had to shift my audience from this definition to this definition, it's like, whoa, I'd have to change so many things. But what I'm hearing kind of underneath what you're talking about is the real need to remain flexible. But can flexibility actually impede your achievements at any point?
Yeah, really good question. I've seen many leaders, again, the visionary kind, with many, many ideas who change the goalposts all the time. That can be very destabilizing, not only for themselves, but for the team in particular. So that can happen when we've got so many ideas and, infinite possibilities, right? Especially people who have this, like, anything is possible. We can do this and we can do that, and let's implement this idea today and this idea tomorrow. I think that can get us in a lot of trouble. And I think that is an example of extreme flexibility, perhaps. So any extreme position that we take on anything, I believe, can be challenging, right? So on one end, we've got feeling like we're in a straitjacket where we're not flexible at all.
Right.
And we don't have enough room to breathe. And then on the other end, we're so flexible that we're just all over the place.
Mm.
And so I believe that staying grounded in sort of the middle way and straddling both, where we can be grounded and anchored and also flexible.
Mm.
So that you're dancing, right? You're dancing, yes, or you're surfing on the waves. I think that's the most powerful place we can be in, because then we can remain clear. We can remain grounded, connected, and objective from that position, rather than being sort of drawn in all these different directions. Because what I also see happening with people who have this tendency is that they don't let their ideas land and germinate and grow, and they're not nurtured enough. And they don't see it through. And then they end up jumping from idea to idea, or, the spinning plates analogy, or, which can be very, very challenging. As I learned from one of my mentors, you can't, there's a different season, right? There's a season for really planting, and then, caring and nurturing and seeing the growth, and then adjusting. And if we're always jumping because we're super flexible, I think that can impede us for sure. For sure.
Okay, I want to move to another aspect of all this. Now that I know that I've got to be flexible, but not profligate, shall we say, stay consistent with something that keeps me grounded. But what if I hit a decision that's really hard? How do you help people really make that decision? Because in the end, that's what you have to do, is make a decision and then to act.
Yeah. So again, getting clear on what you really want, and what's important to you and why that's important to you.
Yes. Yeah.
Is imperative. Because that really then helps you get clear on where you're headed. I find a lot of times that's where we as human beings have difficulty. Our brains are wired to really know very quickly what we don't want, right? What we don't like.
Yeah.
So the opposite of that could be the fast track to getting clear on what we do want. But in my opinion, that's the first step, is really getting clear on where are you headed? What does that look like for you? Why is that important to you? Mm-hmm. And that helps then define, the priority. Mm-hmm. Another thing that I think is really important is to really get clear on understanding what the losses and the gains are from that decision. And because there can be, you may have to give up something to gain something, as an example. And can you live with that? Can you live with that, even temporarily? I find that most decisions are not necessarily permanent. Decisions can be changed, even though sometimes we don't feel like they can be, because it can be an emotional time that we're faced with making a change or a decision. But having that mindset of taking a risk and reserving the right to change your mind, I think is really powerful. You can always change your mind. You can always change your mind. But you do have to take action. And I do find that sometimes there is a cost of inaction that can be greater than taking bad action, if there's any such thing as bad action. But
I call it learning action.
learning action, that's much better. So,
as you're talking, I'm reminded of the time when my husband and I had our house built. I mean, we were very fortunate. We found a piece of land and had a contractor come in and build a house for us. And as I watched them build this house, I said to my husband, this is amazing. We built this house. That means we can make any change we want on this house. And the only thing that the contractor reminded us of, well, there are certain load-bearing walls. You can't move the load-bearing walls. And as you're talking, I'm thinking, well, you have to think, what are my load-bearing walls? But the rest is up to me.
Exactly.
And I can see you identifying this is your load-bearing wall.
Yes. And that's what we do in conversation, as we work through this, as I do with clients, we talk it through. Okay, so you want to do this. So what's the impact of that? And if you do it this way, you could get there in a, faster, but again, depending on what's important to you. Do you want to get there faster? Do you want to, if you do want to get there faster, then here's a shortcut. And these are the things that you may want to consider. But if that's not important to you and something else is important, but let's get clear on what's important first, because I believe that's how we make decisions. We make decisions based on what's important to us, what are our values, and, again, where are we headed and what is the impact of that? So getting clear on all of those things, I think, makes those decisions easier.
Yeah. Okay, last question. You talk about designing success. Okay. What does that look like?
Yeah, so I believe in designing your growth on purpose with intention. And that's what I mean about designing your own success, is being a proactive partner in creating what you want. Don't settle for default, I like to say, but create what it is that you want, because those possibilities are available to you. Now, everybody defines success differently. So that would need to be an important piece to start with, is what does success mean to you? What are the measurements of success? What does it feel like? What does it look like? What does success enable you to do? So getting clear on that, I think, is really important. Once you've defined that, what you want, why you want it, then you can go about reverse engineering the steps that you need to get there. But really, it's about being the leader of, like, leading the way in your own success plan.
Fantastic. I love the fact that in the end, success is the definition is up to you. And then you move toward that. It just gives a person more agency. I think sometimes we always think, well, I have to reach a certain dollar figure, or I have, no, success is what you decide.
Absolutely.
Michaela, thank you so much. I have so enjoyed this conversation. You've brought up in my mind so many new metaphors. I love the one of the where you go into the place where you gamble.
Oh, the casino.
Casino. You know, and just hoping that black will always win. Well,
yeah.
I love it. Thank you so much for that. Again, Michaela. And I love the fact that you have so many options that you give to people. So tell people how they can get in touch with you.
Absolutely. So you can go to michelaquilici.com. That's my main website to learn more, to get some resources, and reaching out to me directly via email at hello@michelaquilici.com. It's another way to get in touch with me.
Great. Again, thank you.
Thank you.
Every now and then, there is something that changes how I think about the world. Grounds for Thought is a place where I talk about these moments so that you can explore the meaning for yourself. Today, I was looking for a specific file on my computer system. Now, because I've been in business so long, I sometimes have to browse through several files to find the specific one I want. I mean, yes, I do have a system, and I know exactly where I should begin my search. But there are a lot of files after 35 years. In the midst of this searching and browsing, I found a remarkable benefit to going through file by file. In fact, it reminded me of an interview for a book I was writing some years ago. The interview was with a thoracic surgeon who was reminiscing about going through the stacks of the library, back where they keep all the books, and finding a book on kidney transplants that when he opened and read portions of it, gave him a great insight into something he might adjust what he had been trying to do with lungs. He said he always found browsing helpful and genuinely resented when the libraries closed the stacks to visitors, forcing them to use only the electronic databases to find relevant books. As I looked through some of my files, like that surgeon, I came across something unexpected yet valuable. It was called Heretic. 2 years ago, I had read the book and found some valuable insights, wrote them down, and put the file away. Stumbling upon it reminded me how that book had changed the way I thought about what it means to leave a familiar place, something that actually gives great comfort, and from that place, stepping into something entirely different, and how that makes us feel. The book is called Heretic, a Memoir by Gina Kadlec, Kadlec. In it, Kadlec talks about her life growing up in an evangelical Christian church where life was clear. Things were laid out black and white as she wrote about it. This was a very common place to be. You know where you stood. You know when you're right. And by definition, you knew who you were. But Kadlec realized that she didn't fit into the definition of a saved person. The book talks about what it meant to leave that comfortable place and step into a new reality. Kadlec realized that while her church taught her that homosexuality was a sin, she knew she was homosexual and so had to leave the church or feel wrong, bad, or without a sense of identity and without the faith that had sustained her for years. Now, I'm not talking about whether you agree or disagree with what it means to be homosexual in your religion. I want to talk about that moment when you lose your sense of identity and your faith and what that means. The lesson that I took from that book was not about sexuality or righteousness or black and white thinking. The lesson I took had to do with the enormous grief that must beset a person who has to consciously step into discomfort. I always understood the grief of losing a house in a fire or losing a parent to death, but never had I thought of it in terms of losing my identity, that I am not the person I thought I was and think I am. Or have I thought about the loss of my faith, which means a sense of belonging to your God? The late Rachel Held Evans wrote in Searching for Sunday, "You can buy books on how to cope with the death of a beloved pet or work through the anguish of a miscarriage. We speak openly with one another about the bereavement that can accompany a layoff, a move, a diagnosis, or a dream deferred. But no one really teaches you how to grieve the loss of your faith. You're on your own for that." That loss of identity, belonging, and faith is critical to resilience. This reminded me of the many conversations I have had with people who discovered in their adulthood that they were adopted. Suddenly, the parents who they always thought were the genesis of who they are aren't. They often describe a sense of betrayal, shock, dislocation. Then they talk about coming to a place of acceptance, where they recognize those parents still love them or still are a part of their genesis, just in a different way. Those parents will still offer belonging to them, just in a different way. Highly resilient people have a keen sense of identity and a social structure that allows them to operate without fear of being cast out. I can't imagine what it would be like to lose that. How would I process it? How would I grieve? How long would it be before I was able to embrace my new identity, to feel I belonged somewhere? In the end, as a leader, I concluded that I need to offer a space. I need to give others time and consideration when they find they are a different person for whatever reason. Give them time and consideration to grieve their loss until they have found adjustment to the uncomfortable place they find themselves. If that person is actually you, and you've had a change in your life where people expected you to just keep going, my advice: find someone you can talk to. Best if it's someone you trust. Tell them you don't need them to come up with answers or even advice. Just ask them to listen. Then talk about the change. If you want, also about what feelings you're experiencing. I think you may be surprised. I want to thank you for joining me today, and I hope you've enjoyed the conversation and learned something new. Your support actually helps others find this type of content. So if you're on YouTube, please subscribe. I'm Madelyn Blair, wishing you infinite possibilities as you unlock your resilient leader.